Hi, I'm Dan Flynn. I'm a member of the Kiwanis Club here in Whitmore Lake. And Duane Bauer right here is a longtime member of the Kiwanis, far longer than I've been living. And so at 55 years, he's a full-fledged, lifelong Kiwanis member. Kiwanis is a service organization that reaches out and cares for people in the community. So for 55 years, Duane has been reaching out into our Whitmore Lake community and beyond to care for people. Duane is also a World War II veteran, and today we're going to ask him some questions about his experience in World War II, a part of history that says something to the fact that Duane truly is an American hero and served our country so well. So, Duane, in 1941, the war started. How old were you at that time?
I was 20 years old.
And you're 20 years old, and when did you actually go into the military?
March of 44, March 30th of 1944.
So I find it interesting that days like when you went into the military, you remember the month, the day, and the year. You never forget those things, do you?
Well, my oldest daughter's birthday was on the 31st, and I had to leave the day before because or we had to have her party the day before her first year because I left that morning at 6 o'clock.
Okay, so here's your daughter, 1 year old, and you're leaving to go off to the war. So you were 20 years old in 1941. Were you drafted into the war?
Well, for a long time, I got a deferment because I was working in a laboratory supply house in Ann Arbor, and they were able to get me a divorce, a deferment. But people were starting to get on me because, what are you doing here? How come you aren't in the Army? My grandson's there, my husband's there, and everything, and I just got tired of hearing that. So when it came time for another deferment, I said, no, I don't know whether I enlisted or I guess I just went in and said I'm ready to go. Okay. And that was the beginning of it.
Okay, so you were able, because of your job, your deferment means you didn't have to go into the military.
I didn't have to go into the military.
Yeah. And you probably could have been deferred for the whole war.
I'm sure I could have been because we were at Everbaugh's laboratory supply house. We were getting a lot of supplies to the various outfits that needed medical supplies and stuff. It was Everbaugh and Son in Ann Arbor.
So in 1944, you enlist, you go through boot camp, you do all the introductory stuff for going into the military.
I can't remember the name of the camp. It was north of Chicago that I went in, and then they moved me down to Fort Hood, Texas for a 17-week training period. I was at Fort Hood, Texas. And then when that was up, they gave me a 10-day delay en route, which took 7 days to get home practically. And then I went to, up on the East Coast. I can't even think of the name of the court where I went out of there. But I went overseas there on the Lake Champlain. It was a big French cruiser party floor.
Okay.
And I forget how, I think there was around 1,200 of us on that boat. And we took turns, 12 on, 12 out in the bunks. And we landed in Glasgow, Scotland.
Okay, so they put you on a French cruise ship, and they filled the boat up with a lot of men.
Oh yes, yeah. We were troop. We turned into a troop carrier, really.
Okay. It was a troop carrier, and it took you to Glasgow, Scotland, and
right.
And what happened from that point?
Well, we debarked from there, got on a train, headed for Southampton, England. We got down to London, and the Germans were doing a blitzkrieg, sending their planes weren't. They didn't have a pilot. It was just a plane go over like a big bomb. And when that was over with, they didn't hit any of the rails. We went on down to Southampton, and then we took a ferry across to where D-Day was.
Yes, Normandy.
Normandy Beach. They had already turned that into a replacement depot.
Okay. And when was Normandy? It was August 1944?
June, wasn't it?
Oh, June.
Yeah, June.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you remember so many years later the details of going into Glasgow, taking the train down. You can see the picture in your head of that experience.
Oh, yes. Well, at Southampton, I don't know, I was there a couple of days, I guess, and before they started me up to my journey up to who the troops that I were going to be with. And we got on a 2.5-ton truck, and away we went with the can of for food.
Okay.
What
Oh,
do they call it?
those kits.
Those kits, yeah.
Yep.
And I landed up in, at Aachen, Germany. It was they dropped me off there. The big red one, the 1st Infantry Division was there, and I was assigned to that.
Okay, so you went across into Normandy and unloaded there because we had already taken Normandy. We made a beachhead.
Yes, oh, yes.
And so they put you in trucks, and they're driving you in. And so you're in Germany, pushing the Germans back further and further.
This was just across the line from Belgium.
Okay.
Aachen was. And Aachen was a big rail center. In our division, we had three branches of it there, the 16th, 18th, and 26th. Those 3 regiments.
Okay.
The captain came over and greeted me. It was dark at night, and he says, "Soldier, did you have anything to eat?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I had a can of sea rations this morning. That's all we had. We didn't have anything else on the way going up." So he says, "Okay, come and follow me." And he took me to the mess sergeant. And he said, "Sarge, you feed this man and feed him well, because in 2 hours he's going on a patrol into Aachen." I said, "Sir, where's the truck that brought me? I'll get back on."
So it meant you had to go in, you were going to go into battle.
I had to go into battle, yep. As I say, we had the city surrounded. There was 3 German divisions in there, and they wouldn't surrender. And I went on several patrols down, and our mission was going till you're shot at, which was real joyful. And but we made it. And finally they decided the divisions were not going to surrender, so we had to go and clean the big city of Aachen out. And we were in the residential area, actually. And when I went under a railroad trestle there to get into the city, Ernie Pyle was there. He walked right along beside me. He followed our division pretty much through the war. And then our mission was going until we were shot at to find out where they were hiding. Well, eventually we started the big drive because they weren't gonna, and we had to go in and clean out every house in that city. And we were in there about 30 days doing that, and we had to when we'd go upstairs and clean out a house, first floor, then we'd throw a concussion grenade down in the basement, and that would block the ears of anybody that was down there, because we found out there was very, very few civilians in there. It was all soldiers. And of course, you'd capture a soldier and he'd go back to, there's a gang that took him back to a prison camp. And we came up on this great big church, huge steps to get into the church. It was real big. We got up onto the first floor of it. Then there was another set of stairs that went up into the sanctuary area. and there was 2 sets of steps going down beside that to the basement. And my sergeant was over on the right-hand side, and he said, "Bauer, throw your grenade down there." I said, "Sarge, I can't throw a grenade down a church basement. I just can't." He said, "Well, go ahead and do it now. You got to do it." And I said, I can't. Go ahead and court-martial me if you have to. I just couldn't do that. Well, all of a sudden, down at the bottom of that steps came a long pole with a white ribbon on it, and the people were surrendering to us down there. And on the back end of it was a little elderly lady that looked just like my grandmother, who was living back home with my dad and mother. And she was from Germany. And she had distant relatives yet over there, cousins, second, third cousins, everything, that were shooting at me, and I was shooting at them. But there was, I think, between 30 and 40 people lived there in the basement of that church. And they had their animals, their chickens, their geese, their ducks, everything down. Little piggies even. And, this little old lady said, "Why did it take you this long to get here? We've been waiting for you guys forever." And they invited us back for dinner, but of course we couldn't fraternize.
So they were really grateful that Americans came and rescued them.
I'll never forget that part of it, that they were so humble that we were helping them out against Hitler, because they were getting tired of his antics too.
So after you left Occam, I know you ended up into the Battle of the Bulge.
Well, first we went through Aachen, and then we had a holding post there on Crucifix Hill, which was just outside of. And then we had a lookout way down the bottom of that hill, and there's 2 straw stacks right there that were German machine gun nests. And I don't know how long there was 2 different missions that I went down to that. And one of them, the guy had his butt up too high. It was because we had to go under barbed wire. And man, it was night, of course, and it just illuminated the whole area. And of course, the machine guns started shooting then too, but they missed us. And I made a second journey down to that place, and they, when it came time for me to come back after the 12 hours, they said, "You're going to be here for another 12 hours. So 24 hours, overnight we were there, and during the day too. And but then they finally moved out down there, the Germans did, and then we thought we were going on to the Rhine River, but instead they took us back up into Belgium to get ready for the Battle of the Bulge. And the Battle of the Bulge, I don't remember too much about it other than there was snow up to our chins, and we had trouble digging foxholes and stuff. And then of course, after that, we went on through the Hurtgen Forest, which was
So in the Battle of the Bulge, you were in combat.
Yes. Through the Battle of the Bulge, I went right through it. Yep.
Yeah. So you were in it. You were shooting. You were having to engage the enemy.
Yes.
Scared?
Well, at times, yes. You're scared the daylights out of you at times when you see a whole mess of tanks coming at you, and you couldn't shoot your rifle. Yeah, the tank didn't do much good, but we made it through. As I say, I don't remember too much about that, except it was a terrible experience. Soldiers getting killed all the time. It was bad, both sides. Well, and after the Battle of the Bulge, we headed towards the Rhine River. No, that's after the Hurtgen Forest. That was, and I think it was the second armored that took the bridge, Remagen Bridge, from the Germans. They had it all set to bow, but they surprised them like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They didn't even have time to push your plungers, so they didn't get
They couldn't blow it up.
couldn't blow it up. Yeah, and then about 3 o'clock, I think it was the next morning, the engineers had thrown up a pontoon bridge across the river, and that we crossed at that, and the Germans came in with their planes and everything, and were bombing, trying to hit the bridge, but they didn't get it. And then we crossed the river, and I remember we got orders a couple days later that we're moving out, and get on anything that's mobile if you can find something to ride. Otherwise, you got to walk, which I walked most of the time, I guess. Oh, I guess I did ride some tanks too a little bit, and then we'd come to a little place we had to clean out, and we'd clean that out and go ahead all the way over to Czechoslovakia. Selb, C-E-L-B. I guess it's actually Selb, Germany, but back then they said it was Selb, Czechoslovakia. And that's where where I was when the war ended, right there in Selb. And then we went back to Nuremberg, Germany, and they brought a bunch of SF troopers that had been captured and taken to the States, and they brought them back to a camp there at Nuremberg, and our Army boys took them in every day to clean up the mess, because that was a big city mess. And then eventually I was made staff sergeant there.
Mm-hmm.
Took over the supply room, actually. Had a lot of work getting things straightened out.
So in 1944, enter into the war. You go across, you clean out this town of Aachen, you end up in the Battle of the Bulge, and terrifying is the word you use. You go through and end up in Selb, Czechoslovakia, and then they turn you around, bring you back to Nuremberg. All of that is happening in about a year and a half to 2 years.
Right, just about, yeah.
So you were mustered out in 1946?
Well, actually, in 45, they took me up to the 99th Division to come home, but it was about the middle of January before we got back to Le Havre, England. And we got caught the Lake Champlain. It was a brand new aircraft carrier that had a record of 3 days and some odd minutes and hours and minutes from one point to the other, back from there over
to the States. So
to the States,
had a
yeah.
3-day ride.
But it took us 11 days to get back because of the storms. We had to go way down south of the Azores.
Yeah.
And but we finally made it in. But saw the old Statue of Liberty, and she was a doll.
People cried.
Yeah, and the first ones that met us was Salvation Army people with bananas, and man, did that taste good. Hadn't had a banana in 2 years. And
So you got home to your wife Ethel May and your daughter.
Yep.
So I bet that was a great moment.
Yes, it was. Oh, yeah. Even though my daughter didn't even know her daddy. Of course, I'd been gone for almost 2 years, and she was 1 year old, or she was 1 year old when I left.
Yeah, so 3 years old when you saw her. Yeah.
I got back home, and my wife had rented a little house here at Whitmore Lake, and my job was waiting for me at Eberbo's, and I went to that job, and then a member of the Ann Arbor Police Department came over and told me the chief wanted to talk with me. He thinks you'd make a good police officer, so I did. I went on the Ann Arbor Police Department for the better part of 15 years, and had some big experiences there. Of course, it was, but not like over in Germany. It wasn't. I don't know just what.
Well, tell me, did you ever forget the war?
Well, I became a believer of Christ. I went through catechism in Ann Arbor with the Bethlehem Evangelical Church. It was at that time. It's right near Mulig's funeral home there, and I was through my 2 years of catechism, and that's where I really became a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I've had that faith ever since that. And I was a member of the Bethlehem Church there. My folks were too. But when I got on the police department and moved out here to Whitmore Lake, and I changed churches because I was on the police department a lot of times on Sunday. I was working, I couldn't go to church. But when my two daughters grew up down there, I decided to change to the Methodist Church out here. Mm-hmm. And I was a member there for a little over 50 years.
So when you look at, you look back now and you say, I've had a good life, a faithful life. But the war was one of those moments that really shaped who you are.
Right. And as I say, I became a Christian back when I was 14 years old. Yeah. And I've been to church all the time. Sure. Follow the church. I feel so sorry for people that don't have that faith. I don't know how they get along. But and then, of course, my family was great, too. I have a great family. I had 4 brothers. 2 of them are gone. And 3 of us were in the service. Well, actually, all 4 of us were. My 2 younger than just under me was in the Air Force, and the medic, that brother was. And then later, my youngest brother went into the Navy.
And they all came home?
All came home, yeah. No, yeah, we didn't lose.
Yeah. Well, Duane, I think what I want folks to realize is that American heroes are never born heroes. You're not born to be a hero. You become a hero. And a war was foisted upon you and our country, and you went and served. You felt the call, and you went, and you served our nation faithfully. And I am grateful, so grateful that you did, because today, because of your willingness to fight, today I can be free, and all of us who are watching this little tape, we all can be free because of the work that you did, you and so many others.
We sure tried, there's no question about that.
Yes.
And we did a job.
Yeah, you did the job, and you
did the job, yeah.
And you did it well.
Yep.
You did it well. So thank you very much for taking a few minutes to just talk with me and share something of your life experience.
Pleasure's all mine, Dan.
Yeah.